Hey guys, and welcome back to the Hamato House. Sorry I've been missing, but I'm back now after having watched Superman 3 times. And can I just say, what a movie. Okay, up front, spoiler warning for Superman, obviously. I know it's been out for quite a while now, but some of you might not have had a chance to actually go around to seeing it, so fair warnings. That being said, I promised a review. But I thought, since it's taken me so long, why not add on a whole discussion video about the future of DC? Fair warning here guys, this is going to be a video that covers a bunch of different topics, so use the chapters below to help skip to the bits that you want me to talk about. Or just, watch the whole video. That one helps out more. Yep, maybe do that one. But all in all, we will talk about the film, about its success, about upcoming projects, some of my theories, some of my biggest wants, my thoughts about specific projects that Gunn has announced, and I'll even throw in some reading advice for you guys related to the DCU. It's going to be a very talky video today, I'm afraid, but stick around because at the end I have some news on some upcoming videos and just general channel updates. Oh, and I almost forgot, we're like 8 months into this channel and I'm still some incorporeal voice. It's about time I channeled my inner dark side and created an avatar. There, I think this will do the trick. I don't want to spend forever on this, but I think it's somewhat important to get my thoughts and biases out of the way. I think this might actually be the best live action Superman we've ever had. It's heartfelt, wholesome, written like an actual comic book series, and just screams Superman. I'm really happy to see saturated colours and goofy comic book antics in Metropolis again. And I really do hope this speaks volumes for the future of the DCU. I want us to get a true and authentic experience of the nature of each and every character in the film they're making. I want to see the darker stories for the likes of Clayface, but then still have the bright family-friendly tone with Big Blue himself. Also, I have to mention Lex, Terrific, Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho all were absolutely ace, and I can't wait for Lanterns next year. If anything, James Gunn has proven time and time again he understands how to use ensemble casts. So I'm glad he's found ways to fit in characters who normally you'd never expect to get the spotlight. If you are curious, I'd give this a solid 5 bottled cities of Kandor out of 5. But has it succeeded? Well, as of 2 days before writing this, it grossed $235 million domestically and $406 million worldwide. While its official budget was $225 million, plus another $128 million in marketing, according to Variety, so take that as realistically as you like. This means the film has already turned a $53 million profit, and that's climbing. The thing is, with the spread of good word, the film's likely gonna have a really good run up until it leaves theaters. When we look back at Superman films in the past, or just leading franchises in cinema in general, it's actually done really well. I can't imagine a world where one could actually argue this was a financial failure as much as some people on Reddit would like to think. I think we can all safely say Gunn's universe is in the clear for the foreseeable future. Oh, and we can expect bigger numbers with the release of films like Supergirl and Batman Brave and the Bold. Why? Well, let's have a look at Batman's biggest success, The Dark Knight. This is insane when you really think about it. Batman Begins barely broke even at the box office and was the start of yet another reboot for DC. Everything spelled disaster, but general audiences appreciated Batman Begins and had a positive reception to it. Therefore, when the sequel released, it had more of a push up front. Supergirl is probably, in fact almost certainly, gonna get that exact same push after the fan adoration Superman received, and Batman Brave and the Bold will get the exact same benefit as long as Supergirl's good, plus the natural spike in popularity all Batman films automatically get. I don't know, for some reason him and Spider-Man alone are better at selling movie tickets than Disney are at park tickets. But yeah, I think Superman succeeded, and I think it was a great and fun film. Well, the slate hasn't been officially updated in some time, other than a release date for Supergirl obviously. But real quick, this looks like the order of things to come. Peacemaker in August, which has finished production, Lanterns in June next year along with Supergirl, both of which have supposedly wrapped filming and are probably in post-production as we speak. Then we have a Clayface film in September of 2026. That is some way through pre-production. Apparently concept art has been made, casting for at least Clayface himself has been done, and some form of a script is complete. Then we know Batman Part 2 is meant for 2027, and Dynamic Duo is slated for 2028, which hurts so much to know we have to wait for those. But then again, both of those are Elseworld stories, so they aren't actually canon to Gunn's universe. And then finally, we know he wants to make a Waller show, an Authority movie, a Batman movie, a Swamp Thing movie, Paradise Lost, a show for the Amazons, Booster Gold show, another season of Creature Commandos, some form of follow-up to Blue Beetle, and WB have officially announced that they have given him permission to make a Wonder Woman project. Geez, that's a lot of projects on the board already. And this is when we get to the actual point I want to raise. I've seen so many people talk about the story of the DCU, the next step for Superman, the Justice League forming from the Justice Gang. When will we see David again on the big screen? And I think people have been phrasing it in a way that insinuates a Superman number 2. But in my opinion, that's not gonna happen. Now, am I saying we will never have a Superman 2? No, of course not. In fact, I believe we definitely will eventually get Superman 2. But I don't think Gunn's universe looks like it has space for overarching plots between trilogies like the MCU. It seems like everyone is getting a shot at a film to sell themselves, and then it's on to the next project. I want to emphasize the fact that I actually like this plan. It gives so many characters who never get a chance to shine an actual chance at being center stage in a cinematic sense. I say this fully aware that they will probably announce Superman 2 in the time it takes me to edit this video. That being said, I am a theorizer at heart, and Superman left me wondering what they could do next. Obviously, the big talking points are the pocket dimension and Ultraman. A lot of people I've heard believe Ultraman will likely return as Bizarro, and a little subsection of the fans seems to have taken that a little further and believe the pocket dimension might become Bizarro World in some way or another. For those of you who don't know, Bizarro is a clone of Superman, but with the reversed powers. He's often depicted as being either zombie-like or being super stupid and saying everything in reverse. He'll have like a backwards S as his logo, and Bizarro World is a version of the Earth where all the superheroes are Bizarro-esque. Honestly, I can see this being the case, but I'm kind of against it. I certainly don't want this next Superman movie to climax with a Kryptonian versus Kryptonian fight again. I've never really been a fan of mirror matches as it is, but especially when that would be a repeat of the first film's final fight, Brains vs. Brawn and all. I also think the pocket dimension doesn't need to return, but if it did, I think the Phantom Zone is a far more fitting use for it, especially with the prison already established inside. And maybe if Brainiac or Mr. Terrific got involved, then they'd be able to crack a way of making a safe version of the portal to the dimension in the Fortress of Solitude. And once again, for those of you who don't know, the Phantom Zone is usually a Kryptonian-made dimension that is used as a super prison for storing villains. It does appear in a ton of stuff, probably most notably as the thing in Lego Batman that Batman uses to trap the Joker, or if you've seen Injustice, those games, it shows up quite importantly in the comic books at the very least. That being said, whilst I don't want Ultraman becoming Bizarro, I definitely would love to see Bizarro appear in some fashion, and I think Ultraman's existence opens that up. I mean, Lex wouldn't have succeeded first try, right? And if he's being rushed off to prison, one could assume his labs are removing any unnecessary evidence of his actions, like say a half-baked clone of Superman. I think that could definitely appear in one of the upcoming shows, or maybe even in a future Superman projects proper. Then, from that, we could even lead into say a Teen Titans or Young Justice film, and introduce Lex's best success yet, a clone with actual intelligence, Connor Kent aka Superboy. There's tons of possibilities for the future of these stories already within one character's existence. Honestly, a great sign for his writing capabilities at the very least. On top of that, we see a dimensional imp in the film, Now, Gunn has confirmed that that was not Mixelpicolic, but that does open the door for him to pop up in the future. I mean, that door was already open thanks to Peacemaker confirming Batmite exists, but that's irrelevant. I'd also like to see Lex take the engineer plans and evolve them possibly in a future storyline, maybe into Metallo or even someone like Red Tornado. That would be pretty awesome. In fact, a lot of what I saw here has me looking forward to how characters could evolve in other projects. I'm excited for more Guy Gardner in Peacemaker Season 2 and the Lanterns TV show, and I'm really intrigued to see Hawkgirl when she meets Hawkman, or even if she ends up dying and getting reincarnated into a new Hawkgirl. Since the one we have is very warrior-esque and kill-focused, maybe a more caring version of her could be a really interesting shift in the future of the franchise. I don't know. There was one appearance in the movie that made more of a talking point for the DCU than any others, and that was Supergirl. First things first, no, she is not inaccurate. I've seen too many people complain about her drunken behaviour and party vibes. Read Supergirl and you'll understand this. I mean, most people respond to the allegations with read Woman of Tomorrow, and that's very true. After all, far before the release of Superman, Gunn said their Supergirl was going to be based off of that storyline. But also, you can go beyond that. Supergirl has always been a very off-centered superhero. She's angry, quite famously so, and struggles with where she belongs. Unlike Cal, she lost everything she knew. Her home ended before her eyes, and this is a world where people on that planet not only died, but weren't even good people. Imagine trying to mourn when your only friend or relative doesn't even understand your society, your people, what it is you lost. I think there's tons to look forward to in how they portray Kal-El, but it raises the question of what should happen in this film, or better yet, after it. Personally, I'm biased, but there's one story I would love for Supergirl to head towards. And with Lanterns slated for a release just before the film, I think it's possible to set this up at the very end. I want the end of Supergirl to present her with a Red Lantern ring. For those of you who don't know, Red Lanterns are basically just like Green Lanterns, but instead of being charged by willpower, they're charged by rage. And in the comic books, Supergirl became a Red Lantern, one of the most significant ones for quite a while. And don't get me wrong, we don't even have to see her take it or make a decision on whether she wants the ring. I just want the ring to land in her hand. Could you imagine a Red Lantern saga, seeing Guy Gardner and Kara, keep in mind Guy Gardner was also a Red Lantern for a very long time, take up the red rings and rain rage on this new DC universe? This could be how we introduce Atrocitus, leader of the Red Lanterns, into the universe. It seems Hal has experience in this universe, so maybe the many Lantern Corps already exist and they have to get Atrocitus back in charge. This could all even accumulate in Blackest Night or the Court Wars. I know I'm hijacking Supergirl for my love of the Lanterns, but still, it's a fun path that's technically still open to them. I'd also love for Supergirl to make amends with her cousin, see Superman in the film, and come to a realization that she doesn't have to be him to be super. There's tons of directions you can take her down. Maybe she ends up joining some sort of unique superhero team, whereas Superman stays solo. I don't know, there's a bunch of different storylines you could honestly go. Supergirl's been around in the comics for an extremely long time. You have choices. But I'm looking forward to it either way. In Creature Commandos, Gunn introduced us to a somewhat comedic interpretation of Clayface, along with, in a flashback, his version of Batman. And more recently, Gunn has revealed some information about his upcoming Clayface project. Apparently it's going to be R-rated, and the concept art was so horrific that Gunn had to look away at multiple points when it was shown to him. It raises a question for me, and that's, is this the same Clayface? Now, to some of you, that might seem like a strange question to ask, but Basil Karlo isn't the only Clayface in DC. In fact, in the Prime universe, there's been the ex-actor Basil Karlo himself, along with criminal Matt Hagen, the Clayface Nightwing usually faces, Preston Payne, Lady Clay herself, Sandra Fuller, and then Payne and Fuller's son, Cassius Payne, made the 5th and final Clayface. Now, a couple of these guys have been depicted as heroes at time. In fact, Basil in the comics is a mainstay in the Bat family. Well, he was before Batwoman shot him, long story, but my list doesn't technically end there. In comic books, Elseworlds and alternate universes exist, and thanks to that, we have a variety of Clayfaces to add onto our options. John Carlinger, Johnny Williams, Todd Russell, Peter Marley, and my personal favourite, and anyone who grew up with the early 2000s Batman cartoon, Ethan Bennett. I think tons of these could work for Gunn's darker film, and it would be incredibly interesting to see some of their stories adapted. Maybe we have Ethan, a GCPD officer affected by a special chemical that turns him into Clayface, and is driven somewhat insane by his new condition. Or we could have a look at a darker, more serial killer-esque story with John Carlinger. Or maybe this is Basil and it's an origin story to his time on stage. Or possibly even set later on. Now released from Cersei's custody, he's free. When he isn't kept by someone, he has no one. He's all alone. I don't really think it should be the same Clayface from Creature Commandos, but I can still see that as a possibility all in all. Now to face the elephant in the room. Should Batman appear in Clayface? Yes. Well, maybe. I think it's important that Clayface, especially if it's Carlo, is centered in Gotham. And with that, I think it's important for the DC universe that Gotham feels like it is home to Batman and the Batman family. That being said, I don't think it's necessary Batman actually shows up in the film. Although it would be nice to get an on-screen look at him before his debut. I think that could actually bypass a lot of the automatic hate his costume will end up getting, which, by the way, will happen no matter how good or bad it is. I mean, as a Snyderverse hater, even I could admit the Batman suit in BVS is actually really good, both versions of it, but I remember the absolute hate that got before its release. Same thing happened to the Reeves suit, but it's just like a natural process of when they reveal a Batman suit, everyone hates it until they see it on the screen. Hell, Superman got it with the corn sweat suit, tons of people were ragging on that. I think the superhero suits just tend to look a little off in still images compared to the dynamics of how they appear in film. So establishing Batman here could be useful from a marketing perspective over anything else. That being said, I definitely think we need someone to show up, even if it's a Robin or a Batgirl. Maybe even Clayface could be set in Bloodhaven, and we get to either see or at least hear about Nightwing being a thing. If it is in Gotham and you really don't want to show us the Bat family just yet, there are ways around it, of course. Clayface mentions the dangers of doing what he does at night. We see other criminals getting put behind bars. People refer to the Bat, stuff like that. There are ways around it as long as it feels like Gotham has these people in it. A big debate I've seen going around since Superman's release is whether or not Robert Pattinson should be in this universe. I get the argument for it, I really do. I understand he's the pinnacle of a brooding and edgy detective Batman, and that's quite literally the opposite of David's Superman. But I really don't want him in this universe. Hear me out before the pitchforks go up, okay? I adore The Batman. I think it's a real love letter to the mythos, and just a super fun film through and through. In fact, I'm extremely picky on my Batman movies, and it's one of the only 2 Batman films I actually enjoy. But it would have some serious issues within James Gunn's universe. Firstly, Reeves' Batman is set in a very closed and isolated universe. It lacks any room for outside forces to have been present or to become present. Not in the same way at least as they are in Superman. It is entirely disconnected from any real semblance of a greater world. This all works well in the film because it locks us to Gotham and Batman's mission. But in a grander world of the DCU, I think it could be a serious problem. Not necessarily saying they have to have references every 5 seconds to the world, but the Batman feasibly doesn't exist in a world with metahumans. The second reason I don't think it should move across is because I want to see the world Reed's created by himself, the stories he can tell with this Batman, and no outside forces playing with his script or his world. I think the Batman deserves to be its own thing. Joining the DCU wouldn't be a privilege so much as a hindrance. And finally, I want a different tone for the DCU's Batman. I agree that many Gotham stories should be dark and dramatic and be presented with a somewhat realist setting. Hell, I'm so glad Clayface is going to be R-rated. But I also want an actually comic book accurate Batman for once. Yes, the Batman is made with respect to the source material, but it is not a recreation of the source material. I want one with an answer for everything, zany gadgets and a goddamn blue cowl. I want Batman to feel like a myth, a legend, a real monster in the shadows of Gotham, but then also a genuine golden age hero to the innocent citizens. I think Batman, if anything, should come off a bit more like old school James Bond, where he's got these over the top gadgets and he solves these grounded realistic issues, but in a unrealistic way. That is how I think he should come off in the DCU. For those of you curious, and this will come up again later in the video as well, but the world's finest, Batman Superman, I think is a perfect example of how James Gunn should interpret Batman. And yeah, I'm very aware that doing this would get a lot of people angry because he wouldn't be brooding and mad. Oh, and the other thing, and this is something that James Gunn's already said about his Batman that I'm very happy about, is he should not be alone. The whole Batman is a loner who doesn't work with other people has never been the character. That's never been what he was, ever. And it's kind of run dry being a joke used in so many different adaptations of him at this point, and it's bloody annoying. Arkham did it well, and everyone else is just trying to poorly imitate it. I think especially with the Bat family existing in this world, it could do wonders to show off a side of Batman that audiences rarely get to see. I think they could expand from there as well, and even lean into the world's finest movie, like I just said, almost the exact opposite of Snyder's direction with BVS, and have a story where Bruce and Supes work together on a globally spanning case. That could just be so interesting. But at the end of the day, as long as the cave has a trophy room with a giant penny, playing card and robot T-Rex, and Batman has a rotisserie wall of suits, and the Bat family actually show up, I know I'll be satisfied. Okay, well, thank you if you've made it this far. There's a ton to recommend. I'm sure you've all been recommended All-Star Superman if you enjoyed the film, which is now available as a compact comic book, by the way, and of course, Woman of Tomorrow to prepare for Superwoman. But there's a couple other stories I'd recommend people give a read with this universe expanding as it goes forwards. I recommend for Superman, Superman All Seasons, and Superman Peace on Earth, both of which have clear inspirational effects on this Superman movie that we've just watched. And if you want something more modern, I'd send you once again to World's Finest, one of my personal favourite ongoing series, or Absolute Superman. It might seem like a departure from the Gunn style, but I assure you it holds all the core values that this universe Superman does. With Supergirl, the best thing I could recommend currently is the ongoing Supergirl series. At time of writing, there's only 3 issues out, but it's written and illustrated by Sophie Campbell, the same woman who wrote and illustrated a large portion of the almost perfect IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book series, which separately, if you haven't read that, there's a lot, but I highly recommend it. With Lanterns coming up, I think it's likely that the show will draw inspirations from one of, if not all of, these Lantern stories. Jeff Johns' run on Green Lanterns, specifically the Parallax arc, Green Lantern Core Wars, the Blackest Night event, and the Brightest Day events. For how I want this universe's Batman, I once again, for the last time in the video, recommend World's Finest. But if you just want something to read that holds tons of potential and feels like the exact thing Gunn would use as inspiration, check out Batman Urban Legends. It's an anthology series mostly set in Gotham, telling stories about the entirety of the Batman mythos. From an amazing Red Hood storyline to some great Tim Drake stuff, and even a beautiful Ace the Bat-Hound story for all of you crypto fans out there, where Ace has to try and save Batman. And it's genuinely great stuff, and I believe can be picked up across 2 trades, or you could always just get the single issues, which is what I did. Of course, there's tons of other comic books out there to check out, and as always, in the channel there is a link to my personal comic book store that I use and buy stuff from, and I'll end up linking it in the description of this video as well. But also check out your own local comic book stores. There's comic book store finders. You can always just use Google as well to order things online, but it's always best to sort of support those local comic book stores. Alrighty then, I know I've been gone for a little while and I am sorry, but hey, we have an avatar now, plus I think there's going to be a schedule going forwards for the channel. I want to upload at least something once a week. The plan is for the most videos to be simple, talky ones, probably quite short, like this and our comics and tea series. But once a month, I'll do a Rivals video, designing character kits. And I would also want to make some videos where I talk about how some characters could be conceived in certain video game ideas. An idea I've been floating for a while now is coming up with a concept for Green Lantern having a video game. We will also occasionally be live streaming. In fact, expect one in the coming weeks, hopefully, where me and maybe a guest will be having a look at some of the reactions to the Superman movie here on YouTube, both good and bad. That being said, our next video on the channel is going to be a Rivals one, and it's one I've thought about making since I did the Sinister Six video way back when, and that's 3 more Spidey villains. Okay, everyone, thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you all in the next video.